7C. Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we're checking out the 7th Sea Englishman who inspired Lord of the Rings.
At the top of the 199 steps in the coastal town of Whitby, you can see this extremely ornate stone pillar.
Whitby.
This is actually a reminder of a miraculous story involving the first poem ever written in the English language, which took place on this very site here.
Wow. The first poem in English. And it happened in Whitby. Yo, I reacted to this, tradition or holiday that happens in Whitby. They tie a bunch of sticks together and put it in the ocean, and what do they call it? I forgot. Ascension Day. And if they don't do it, all their land goes to the church. How's that mortgage work out, right? Anyway, be sure to go to Britmapped and like and subscribe. Let me go ahead and like this video, even though I haven't watched it yet. And if you made it 30 seconds or however long into this video, maybe give me a like and subscribe. Anyway, look at this shot. That's beautiful. Someone got a drone.
Whitby's most famous export in the world of literature is Dracula, which is very much embraced locally. But 12 centuries before Dracula was released, an even more important piece of literature that everyone in this country should know of was produced here. One that went on to inspire one of the greatest writers of all time, J.R.R. Tolkien. And it all started with one man.
Dracula? Hang on. What are Whitby's ties to Dracula? Whitby's ties to Dracula come from Bram Stoker's 1890 visit, during which he researched Transylvanian folklore at the local library and found inspiration in the town's Gothic atmosphere, including the ruined abbey and the 199 steps. Homeboy mentioned that. He incorporated parts of Whitby into the novel, such as the shipwreck of the Demeter and the name of Dracula's first victim, Swales. Today, the connection is a major part of the town's identity, with a goth weekend festival and numerous locations referencing the novel. I had no idea Bram Stoker vacationed in Whitby and came up with the story of Dracula. Researched it. Amazing. Way to go, Bram.
And it all started with one man named Caedmon, who in about 680 was a lowly lay brother. A herdsman, actually, who was described as well advanced in his years. What is quite interesting is that Caedmon is actually a name of British origin and points to the survival of the British during the Anglo-Saxon migrations of the 7th century. But he was completely illiterate and had no real artistic skill, which was an issue.
Yeah.
It was an issue because he lived in a great monastery here named Strenashalch. That monastery is now beneath the ground here on the cliffs, beneath the stone pillar and the church, and also the ruins of Whitby Abbey. It's important you understand this. The abbey that you see in this video is not the one I'm talking about. This was Norman, dates the 13th century.
Yo, this monastery he lived at is so old, it's under the ground. 800s.
The Anglo-Saxon monastery that I'm talking about, Strenashalch Monastery, lay beneath. That name, by the way, is of course Old English. I may have pronounced that a little wrong, but please forgive me. And it was only when the Vikings came that this place became Whitby. The BY prefix is very common in ex-Viking occupied areas, not just in England. Anyway, this Caedmon was a resident of...
like Grimsby, Willoughby, there's a lot of them.
This great monastery here, who cared for the animals. So why was it an issue that he had no real artistic ability? Well, after the evening feasts, harps would be passed around and people would take it in turns to sing. In fact, it was demanded of you that you sing. But
he said harps. I thought he said hops, like beer, but he said harps.
People would take it in turns to sing. In fact, it was demanded of you that you sing. But sources made it very clear that Caedmon lacked the knowledge of not only how to use a harp, but also how to compose the lyrics to songs. So after dinner, in a rather ashamed fashion, he would just retire to the animals and then go to sleep. This was a recurring theme for poor Caedmon.
Caveman. So I guess he's taking care of the sheep and the cows and the horses and the goats and the chickens and the geese and the meese and the mices and the rats and the cockroaches.
Until one night, after retiring to his animals, he fell asleep in the hay, and he had a dream. In this dream, someone approaches him and asks him to sing Principium Creaturarum, or the beginning of created things. He of course refused because he couldn't sing, but all of a sudden he found himself uttering verses which he'd never heard before in praise of God the Creator.
Wow. So this happened in the dream. Y'all, anyone can sing. Look. God, 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 God. See?
The man requested Kedman play the harp too, which to his surprise, he was able to play a beautiful tune to accompany the poem he had just created.
Now that's something. That's something. Not everybody can play the harp. You gotta have fingers and arms. You could probably play with a tongue, but I don't know. That takes some knowledge.
Even though he'd never sung or played an instrument before in his entire life. But dreams are only temporary, and he soon woke up. To his amazement, he remembered the dream, and also that he could still recite the song and play harp. It was nothing short of miraculous. He immediately informed his superior, who took him to the abbess of the monastery, our second great historical figure from this story. She was St. Hild of Whitby. She lived between 614 to 680, and she led the monastery here as it became one of the most significant religious centres in the Anglo-Saxon world, in which literally kings would seek her counsel here. Coincidentally, her brilliance also started from a dream. When she was an infant, her mother dreamt of a precious necklace glowing underneath her garment. It seemed to shine forth with such a blaze of light that it filled all Britain with the glory of its brilliance. The necklace represented Hilda and the light that she brought, but upon hearing Kedman's recital of the hymn, she immediately declared it an act of God. This became known as Kedman's hymn, the first ever English poem, the first English sacred verse. He then...
Now hail with me, heaven's keeper, the framer's might, his mind's working, king forever, father of glory, ultimate crafter of all wonders, holy maker who hoisted heaven to roof the heads of the human race, and fashioned land for the legs of man, liege of the world-born Lord Almighty. I smell alien farts.
English sacred verse. He then became a monk and lived a life of creating powerful Christian verses, which made him very useful, as he could create these verses in a dialect that the local Northumbrians could understand, so it was key in converting them to Christianity. He then passed away on this exact location in the year 680. Now, you may be asking how we know all this. Well, just 50 years after...
It's the 600s. I thought he said 800s earlier. 600.
Converting them to Christianity. He then passed away on this exact location in the year 680. Now, you may be asking how we know all this. Well, just 50 years after Kedman's life, Bede existed, known as the father of English history. He's one of the most important people in our country's history,
Bede?
And in my opinion, he does not get talked about anywhere enough. So we had England's first ever historian, Bede, writing about the first ever poem in English. This is pure history right here. So it's thanks to Bede that this history actually survived, and who knows where we would actually be without him. But how does this relate to Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
So as we know, Tolkien is one of the greatest writers to have ever graced the earth, let alone Britain. And he was an Anglo-Saxon scholar. And we can clearly see this is what he took inspiration from in Lord of the Rings. I think the vast majority of my audience will be aware of the Lord of the Rings story, Tolkien's most famous piece. So you'll be aware of Middle-earth, the main continent of the franchise. Now, You may think he called it Middle-earth for whatever reason, maybe because he was raised in the Midlands of England, but the actual truth is that it was an Anglo-Saxon concept, which is spoken about in Kedman's hymn, the very first English poem that I've talked about. So the story of today's video may seem so far back in history that it's incomprehensible, but if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings and modern culture, know that it would not exist without the likes of Kedman. In fact, 12 Anglo-Saxon poets have been identified in medieval sources, but Kedman is the earliest of them all.
Cottages.
So in his hymn, he mentions Middengeard, which is Old English for Middle Earth. The concept was simple, really. We're in Middle Earth, Upper Earth is heaven, and Lower Earth is hell.
Okay.
And this directly influenced Tolkien to use Middle Earth in Lord of the Rings. So this is pure English heritage. This is what it's all about. This is what gets me going. But what about this mysterious stone pillar at the top of the cliff here in Whitby?
What about it?
It is, of course, in far too good condition to be an ancient or medieval relic. It was actually erected in 1898. It stands powerfully at the top of the steps here. There is exactly 199 steps, but that's a different topic.
Why is that?
You cannot miss it as you walk up. Upon closer inspection, you will see just how ornate it really is. It's a thing of beauty, and I encourage anyone to get up close and have a look at it.
Wow. Yeah. Intricate carvings. What does it say?
You can actually find an inscription stating, "To the glory of God and in memory of Cædmon, father of English sacred song, fell asleep hard by AD 680. Now, some of you may be thinking, that sounds like quite a unique way to describe someone passing away, that they fell asleep very hard, but this isn't what it means. It's actually a bit of a homage. The fall asleep is, of course, a reference to his peaceful death, but the very hard, which is an old English phrase with a totally different meaning now, but it meant nearby or close by. So it just means that he passed away close by this monument, and he is somewhere underneath to this day, most likely. So another super fascinating history find here today. Thanks a lot for watching, and if you appreciate the time I've put into this one, please do leave me a like. I do appreciate it.
Y'all be sure to go to Britmap and like and subscribe. Britmapped. Past tense. Beautiful. He got a drone. I've never heard of this Bede fella. Bede historian. Oh, Bede. He lived from 672 to 735. So he was alive when Cædmon was alive. Cædmon, right? He's a saint. Okay. There he is. There he is. English poet whose name is known. The earliest English poet whose name is known. A Northumbrian cowherd who cared for the animals at the double monastery in Whitby Abbey during the abbacy of St. Hilda. What do the 99 steps have to do with anything? 199 steps. Also known as the church stairs and Jacob's ladder, is a Grade 1 listed structure between the Old Town and St. Mary's Church in Whitby, North Yorkshire, England. The 199 steps have been recorded since at least 1370. They used to be made of wood. Being mentioned in the book Dracula. Okay. He mentioned the steps in Dracula. The 199 steps were the most direct route from the town to the church for funeral processions. Macabre. Level platforms still exist in several locations on the ascent to afford mourners the chance to rest the coffin they are carrying and to get their breath back. The 199 steps are mentioned in Dracula by Bram Stoker, said to have been influenced by the wreck of the brigantine Dimitri, which was stranded on Collier's Hope in the outer harbor. In Stoker's novel, a ship, Demeter, is wrecked off Whitby, and a black dog comes ashore and ascends the 199 steps up to the churchyard. In his assessment of the Church of St. Mary, Nicholas Pevsner recommended climbing the steps to unfold the best view of the church and clifftop. The steps were renovated in 1988. I didn't realize Whitby was so notable. I think I've looked it up, but show me on a map. Whitby. There it is. Where are these steps? Whitby Abbey, there. There it is. Yes. Where's that monument? There are the steps. Oh, yes. Oh, there it is. Wow, that's quite a photo with the lit up city behind it. Ooh, renovations. Graveyard. Yeah, very Dracula. Look at that. Very Dracula. So many gravestones. That is wild. Oh my god. Wow. This would have been a great place to film Dracula. Look at that. Wow. Man. Beautiful. And frightening. Well, I'd like to say thanks to my patrons. I'd like to say thanks to my Buy Me a Coffee folks. Be sure to go to Britmapped and like and subscribe. Thank you all for watching this with me, and I'll see y'all next time. Later.